Welcome, everybody, to Club Fantasy's Monday Hangxiety. And as you can see right below me, we are presented by Manscaped. Head over to manscaped.com, use promo code Club Fantasy, save yourself 20% off on all your men's grooming. All right, awesome, cool. I'm Josh Hudson. With me is special guest Austin Amandolia, one of our contributors with Club Fantasy. He's filling in this week for Ryan because Ryan is probably trying to drive back through a snowstorm of some kind. He had to go to Ohio for the weekend to handle some family business. So, Austin, thank you so much, buddy, for filling in.
Yeah, happy to be here. I mean, this is like the perfect Monday to come on because Sunday's fantasy experience was just miserable.
Right? Yeah, dude. The early slate of games this week was god awful. And holy crap, were there some bad offensive performances to start the 1 o'clock game. So as we do every week here, I'm going to give a quick rundown of kind of, the quick recaps and so forth. We'll start with Thursday. The Titans triumph over the Packers 27-17. Christian Watson, within a 4-day span, has caught 5 touchdown passes. Like, rookie to the moon, baby. Love to see it. Eagles, they come back to beat the Colts 17-16. Falcons squeak one out over the Bears 27-24. Younghoe Koo, 53-yard field goal in the fourth quarter with, I believe it was about 6 minutes left or so. Was essentially the difference in the game. Couple injuries to note, though. Justin Fields injured his left shoulder. He did stay in the game, but there are plenty of people that do firmly believe that the injury is likely had something to do with that final interception that he threw to seal the game. Also of note, Kyle Pitts suffered a knee injury during the win. Austin, if you have any quick comments you want to drop on the Falcons, because I know that's your team, feel free. Now's the time to do it.
I mean, nothing is quick when it comes to my thoughts on the Falcons. I just don't get the process we're going for here. Like, I hate being in purgatory, and it feels like if there were a week to start Desmond Ridder, it would have been this week, coming off of the long bye after a Thursday night game. Yeah, I'm just disappointed because we're in playoff contention as it stands right now. If the 49ers lose tonight, we are tied for the last wild card spot. Or sorry, we are 1 game out from the last wild card spot from the Washington Commanders, and that just doesn't feel good. I would like a high first round pick to get a good quarterback, but here we are. The one thing I will say is I do love Arthur Smith's offensive scheme. It's been, except for the fact that we're not using Drake London and Kyle Pitts to their fullest, like, I think it's creative, like the future there, but just sucks to continuously be in purgatory.
Yeah, that middle ground, it's very similar to Dynasty, right? Like, if you're in the middle, you're kind of really at the bottom. So
yep, exactly.
It definitely is not fun if you're a Falcons fan. But continuing with the recap, Bills handle the Browns in Detroit. As most people know, there was a massive snowstorm in Buffalo. Essentially snowed the game out, so they had to move it to Detroit. Buffalo ends up playing in Detroit on Sunday. We'll be back there on Thursday for Thanksgiving at the Lions. They handle the Browns 31-23. Amari Cooper had himself a day, 8 catches, 2 touchdowns. The Patriots, that was a wild ending. They they put away the Jets on an 84-yard punt return. Final score 10-3. There were 17 punts in this game, and one of them was the final nail in the coffin. Marcus Jones. Seriously, if you play IDP, dream game right there. Absolute dream game.
I mean, that punt doesn't get returned for a touchdown. Like, this game could have gone for a tie.
Absolutely, because there was zero offense in this game. It was bad. Saints outlast the Rams 27-20. Injury to note, Matthew Stafford left the game with a concussion. This is now the second game in a row he has left with a concussion. If they end up going the Tua Tagovailoa route, honestly, we may not see Stafford for a couple games. But when you're looking at the Rams record right now, why are you bringing him back? In all honesty, Cooper Kupp's down 6 to 8 weeks is now what they're saying. Just write it out with the backups in all honesty at this point. The Lions, they just exploited the Giants 31-18. If I told you that a running back in this game had 3 touchdowns and you guessed it would Saquon, you would be wrong, my friend. Jamal Williams scores 3 touchdowns in this game. Luckily, DeAndre Swift got one in the end zone. But yeah, there's definitely some head scratchers there. Unfortunately, in this game, we lost Wan'Dale Robinson to a torn ACL. It was just announced today. The young cat had himself a game yesterday. I believe it was 9 catches for over 100 yards. The Ravens down the Panthers in another ugly offensive game, 13-3. The Commanders handled the Texans quite easily, 23-10. The Raiders beat the Broncos in overtime, 22-16. Derek Carr to Devontae Adams on the first possession in overtime was the sealer, 7 for 141 and 2 touchdowns for Devontae Adams. That was a horrible call by myself on Wednesday when I said that Patrick Surtain would shut him down because, revenge after earlier in the season. Yeah, dumb. The Cowboys demolished the Vikings 40-13. I think it's looking like Tony Pollard season. Not going to lie. The kid is looking like some juice. And hey, you know what? Ezekiel Elliott fell in the end zone twice. So there's definitely some good running backs there in Dallas, right? Bengals edged the Steelers 37-30. Another injury concern. Joe Mixon left the game with a concussion. Samaje Perine with not 1, not 2, but 3, not rushing, but receiving touchdowns. The first Bengals running back to do that, I believe. And for the Sunday night game, the Chiefs come back and bounce the Chargers 30-27. Clyde Edwards-Helaire left the game with an ankle injury, though I don't think it really much matters because I feel like Isaiah Pacheco is kind of taken over this job at this point. But Mike Williams, receiver for the Chargers, also re-injured his ankle. It was a very nice sideline catch, not going to lie. Kadarius Toney, the breakout that we all thought would happen was very short-lived. Did not see a single target and left with, what do you guessed it, a hamstring injury. But Travis Kelce, for the second time this season, 3 or more touchdown receptions, absolute baller of a performance by Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. And before we get into my Up with the Birds segment here, I want to bring up this from Jim. Kelce put me ahead 41 points. He's playing CMC and Rondell Moore, full PPR. Austin, do you think he has the win in the bag?
I'm going to go with yes. Just I don't. Rondell Moore's a little bit hit or miss to me. So I think he could pull it out.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a chance. I mean, you never know with CMC. If Shanahan decides he wants to give Elijah Mitchell 25 touches to CMC's 15, blows my fucking mind why you give up that many draft picks to get CMC and then use Elijah Mitchell that way. I will say, this is a great spot for Rondell Moore. The 49ers do struggle against slot receivers, and Rondell Moore's been seeing a ton of targets of late. Love this matchup, so I think it's going to be close. But with Colt McCoy, you never really know, buddy. And from our man Elixirs, why are 4 of 6 of the top 6 in my league not scoring 80 points while I'm in 11 versus 12? Who just hung 120 in my face? Why do I have to go 3-8? I'm going to start crying. Elixirs, buddy, I love you. You're one of our most loyal fans and a Falcons fan, no less. So I feel the sadness that embodies you at this point. But this is fantasy football, man. Like, I'm starting to understand more why people are banging the drum for median scoring for wins, because being in the top half of your league every single week in points scored and getting losses, median scoring can definitely help with that and help you sneak into the playoffs. Austin, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel this. I'm about to be 6-5 with a team that has Josh Allen, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, Saquon Barkley, and Austin Eckler. Like, it's just sometimes it cuts the wrong way. Yeah, love median scoring. It really does help balance things out, but win some, you lose some.
That's the simple truth, and it sucks. Fantasy is a cruel mistress, let me tell you. All right, so Up with the Birds. This is where I give some quick observations of the Eagles games because I run the network and I'm an Eagles fan, so I do what the fuck I want. We'll start with the Monday night from week 10 because obviously this show took place last week. Look, we blew the game against the Commanders. It is what it is. It sucks. The Watkins fumble was an absolute dagger, but turning the ball over as many times in that game as you have all season, that's a recipe for disaster. It is what it is. You take the L, you move on. The Eagles came out absolutely flat against the Colts. I don't know if it was the short week. I don't know if Dallas Goedert being lost for this, I don't want to say the season, but at least the next 4 weeks really played into it. But this offense looked terrible in the early part of the game. But the one thing that I've been banging the drum on all season, we need to see how this team is going to respond when they're losing in the second half. They played well in the second half against Washington. Again, it was the turnovers that killed them. They ended up scoring 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, the only 2 touchdowns they scored in this game. Jalen Hurts did his thing, bringing in Linval Joseph off the street, bringing in Ndamukong Suh off the street to plug the running game. They gave up 49 yards and a touchdown to Jonathan Taylor in the opening drive. The run defense settled in. I believe he only had 82 yards the rest of the game, or 84 yards or something along those lines, but they shut it down. Gannon ran a lot of 4-2, 5-1 fronts, which, again, you have that many defensive linemen, you're going to be able to curb the run game at that point. And that's what they needed to do. He needed to change the scheme to fit with these guys, because the scheme is the back forward, and to me is just ass backwards. I'm sorry, I don't get it. But I said that Devonta Smith would have a good game against the Colts zone defense. He did. He led the team with 78 receiving yards. He accounted for 33% of the team's receptions and 41% of the team's receiving yards. That's what you wanted to see from Devonta Smith in the absence of Dallas Goedert. So was it an ugly win? Yes. It was a win nonetheless and not a loss. Dallas beating Minnesota. We now have a comfortable 2-game lead, really, on Minnesota for the number 1 spot in the NFC, simply because we beat we beat Minnesota earlier in the year. We still have one more game against Dallas, so a lot of this is going to figure itself out, but we get Sunday Night Football against the Packers. Definitely looking forward to that. So for the next segment, we're going to go to the hangover. This is the biggest head scratcher of the weekend in Austin. I'll let you start because I've been rambling on now for God knows how long. So Austin, take it away.
Well, mine, just to start off, is all NFL offenses, particularly in the 1 o'clock slate. Like, the 1 o'clock slate was awful. I was watching Red Zone and had my scoreboard up on my phone and just seeing everything going on. We made it to halftime with only 6 teams not having scored a touchdown yet. Throughout the whole day, 7 teams did not score a touchdown in the entire first half, and 4 teams didn't even score an offensive touchdown. Now, much of that was attributed to the New England Patriots and the New York Jets not being able to score any offensive touchdowns. But the thing that also got me is we had nearly as many made field goals as touchdowns. There were 46 made field goals on Sunday and 47 total offensive touchdowns. That stat just drives me mad, because it messes with all of our fantasy stats, because then everything is just about kickers. And as we'll talk about later, there were some great kickers on the day, but I could not understand why offenses were struggling so much. In particular this week, I thought we were going to start getting rolling after week 10. Things just seem to kind of settle out a bit, but defenses are continuing to run the NFL right now, and it's making playing fantasy football more complicated and a bit more volatile.
I love this comment from one of our contributors, Joel. Yesterday was a perfect day for the Packers to be off, so I could appease the wife and go shopping. And you know what? Based on everything that Austin just said, you didn't miss much, buddy. I will say, if you love kickers, it was a day. As our buddy Elixir's, one of the biggest Young Wei Koo fans, the 53-yarder. I'll get to some of my guys here shortly with the prop section of this anyway, but Bill Maher from Dallas and Tyler Bass from Buffalo, they definitely carried their teams. Let me tell you, some big fantasy performances. I got 32 points from Tyler Bass and Scott Fishbowl scoring.
Yeah, it's wild. If you look at that game too, it's like, the Bills dominated. It's like, no,
they really just didn't.
Kicked a bunch of field goals.
They were very flat, and it was pretty evident, especially early. This week for Buffalo was very much akin to a Thursday game, right? Very little practice time. Rushing to get everywhere. Like, they couldn't go to practice in Buffalo because everything was snowed out. So a lot of it was virtual meetings, and they got a late flight into Detroit because of the snowstorms. Like, I fully understood why this team came out flat. I mean, you see 31 points, you're kind of assuming that Josh Allen had himself a game, 197 yards and a touchdown. Like, it was a very flat performance from Josh Allen and the Buffalo team.
Yeah, maybe it just turns out we thought that putting them in a dome was going to be like, oh, they're going to let Josh Allen ball out, and it was like, nah, Tyler Bass. My
There you
man,
go, baby.
he now gets
no win, no outer conditions. Got you. One of my biggest head scratchers, though, the Vikings, man. Like, I understand it was 425 and it was the game of the week. It's more primetime adjacent than actual primetime. But man, Kirk Cousins, dude, what in God's name happened to you? I will point this out. The most times that Kirk Cousins was sacked heading into this game was last week when he was sacked 4 times. This past week against Dallas, 7 times he was sacked. That means he's been sacked 11 times over the last 2 weeks. This is just wow. Like, this is, arguably the best team in the NFC. And you come out at home after a big win against Buffalo and just non-existent. Like, you don't even show up. Like, for all this talk about how bad the NFC East is or has been or whatever, the Vikings are 0-2 against Philly and against Dallas. I just want to point that out. And they've scored a grand total of 10 points against these teams. Not great if you're Minnesota, let me tell you.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Like, I think part of what's happening is we're seeing their lack of depth at receiver. Like, Adam Thielen, he's not the same player he used to be, so he can't separate in man coverage. And so then you're just relying on Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne, and like KJ Osborne.
We're not even using Osborne that much.
I know, that's the thing. I like him, and he hasn't been really breaking out the way we thought he might do this year as Adam Thielen starts to age and kind of regress. But then I think the point you made, like the offensive line just has not been able to protect Kirk Cousins in these situations. I will say I was listening to the Athletic Football Show, and they were talking about the Minnesota Vikings offense and how they've changed their scheme significantly this year. They went from playing in previous years a very heavy personnel with lots of tight ends, and so it's easier to pass protect, and then you just take your shots and you have your quick reads. And this year they're playing a lot more 11 personnel, and we even see them using empty a lot. And so Kirk Cousins is having to read these plays out more than he has had to in the past, and it's less of a grinded out scheme. And I think that against teams that are able to rush the quarterback with 4 players like Dallas, it's not happening for them because I think he's not settled in that offense, and their offensive line isn't quite good enough to be able to just drop back without some chip help and additional tight ends in for blocking.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of us thought heading into the season was with the switch, from who the hell was their coach? Zimmer to Kevin O'Connell, coming from that Rams system, that the Vikings were going to be running a lot more 11 personnel. And I think that's why a lot of us were a little bit higher on KJ Osborne. Me personally, I love the kid. I thought he had a great, fill in last year as Adam Thielen battled injuries. Thielen isn't getting any younger. I kind of thought he'd be hurt by now, but he stayed relatively healthy. Yep. And I think a lot of that's why we're seeing so much, more Thielen than Osborne. But I'll tell you, this game to me would have been a lot different had TJ Hawkinson actually not dropped so many footballs. There was a bit in the first half where he had 2 straight drops that would have changed a lot of the momentum for the Vikings going into this game. So just really baffling from that perspective. But Austin, go ahead with your next point, and we'll get to these questions here in a little bit, guys. I promise I see him.
Yeah, I mean, next for me is Saquon Barkley. You alluded to it earlier. He only averaged 1.5 yards per carry, which is kind of the old Saquon we've seen in some ways, where he's very boomer bust and he only pops in fantasy when he breaks those 20-30 yard rushes. But that hasn't been the case this season. And so it was surprising to see it this week, particularly against the Detroit Lions, because this was supposed to be the perfect matchup. Even though they've been doing better against the run over the past few weeks, they still are a bottom 10 team against the run. And so it seemed like the opportunity for Saquon to just dominate the Detroit Lions. And for whatever reason, it didn't pan out this week. And I think, fortunately they still lost. The Giants were still able to move the ball through the air. But the thing was, too, even as they were behind, they weren't using Barkley in the pass game like they typically do. He only had 2 catches throughout the game. And you would think with a game script, he would have gotten to at least 5 catches. But this game was a head scratcher for me. I still don't really know what to make of it. I'd love to go back and watch it, but I think we'll see a bounce back from Barkley moving forward. But this should have been the perfect matchup, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something we've seen too with Detroit. Their run defense has improved over the last few weeks. Like early in the season, you could run all over these guys. That's why it looked like such a great matchup. Something that, at least I try to do. I can't speak for other fantasy analysts, but it's one thing to look at like, how defenses have performed over a full season. Sometimes you got to shrink that a little bit. Look at the last 2, 3, even 4 weeks, or maybe go back to like 5 or 6 and kind of see, because how teams start the year is a lot different than what they are at the current point. So Detroit isn't as, I guess, running back friendly, so to speak, as they have been in the past. So maybe something, maybe seeing a turn of the tide, so to speak, with their defense. You already touched a little bit on the Bills in the earlier segment, so I'll get my last 2 out of the way before we get to these questions going. Tyler Boyd, 7 targets, great. 2 for 42, not great. This was a primo matchup for Tyler Boyd and the Bengals to take advantage of. The Steelers have allowed the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers out of the slot per the edge tool on the 33rd team. And you figure without Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd's been very featured in this offense. You lose Joe Mixon. Should be another big bump for Tyler Boyd. Nope, not at all. They went to Samaje Perine. T. Higgins had himself an absolute game. It was really disappointing to see Boyd just fall absolutely flat on his face. And then Zach Wilson. I mean, come on, guys. 2nd overall pick. I think what's worse for me than the 9 for 22 for 77 yards and only putting up 3 points, that press conference after the fact, when he just refused to take any sort of blame for how bad the offense was. Oh, let's not sugarcoat, the game conditions weren't all that great, blah, blah, blah. Hey, Mac Jones only had 4 incompletions and threw for over 200 yards. So what the fuck is your excuse, Zach Wilson? Because by all accounts, you have better playmakers on your offense than New England. So what gives, homie? Sorry, Jets fans. Zach Wilson, not it. Y'all going to be looking for another quarterback here in the next year or two, I promise you. All right, so before we get into a shot of espresso, I want to pull up some of these questions really quick, and then we'll do our pay the bills segment. So from Brian here, morning, guys. Down 50 with James Conner, McCaffrey, and the 49ers defense special teams. Do I squeeze out the W? Austin, what do you think, bud?
I don't like James Conner in this matchup, so I am feeling like this probably won't go your way. You're really relying on McCaffrey here, to me, to get 30 points, so that then James Conner and the 49ers don't have to do that much on the other side. But I'm taking the under on James Conner rushing line tonight, so not feeling too great about that.
What is his rushing line tonight? Do you know?
It's about 48 and a half.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, 49ers do play good defense. Like I said, they're pretty susceptible out of the slot. With the Cardinals recently cutting Benjamin, kind of feels like this is Connor's backfield. He's probably going to play 90% of the snaps if he makes it through the whole game healthy. So he's going to have a lot of opportunity. Colt McCoy is somebody that, historically speaking, does really well in the first game that he starts in the season. Not so great after that. So I think that's going to benefit the 49ers special teams or defense special teams for you. It could hurt James Conner as a result. And at this point, you are relying on McCaffrey. I think it can be close because, we've seen McCaffrey's ceiling. Obviously, he can score 40 or 50 by himself. But, the way that it seems that, Shanahan wants to kind of use Elijah Mitchell in here, I think that really just limits McCaffrey's ceiling. So unless you get, Connor just falling in the end zone a couple times, which, again, he scored 2 touchdowns last week. So it is very possible, especially because when the Cardinals do get into the end zone, they have literally one play. It's James Conner up the gut. That's what he does. I don't love your chances, but I'm not ruling it out, Brian. I'll address this really quick from George. Yes, AJ Brown is a bit of a conundrum, but that's every star wide receiver. I'm just throwing that out there. Everybody thinks that you're getting consistent production all the time from your top 5, top 10 guys. There's always going to have boom bust weeks. I said going into this week that Devonta Smith was the wide receiver you wanted because AJ Brown excels in man coverage. Colts do not play a ton of man coverage. They play a lot of zone, and that is Devonta Smith's. That's his area. That's where he succeeds. He sits in the zones, and Jalen Hurts finds him. AJ Brown still had a decent game. I think it was 5 for 60, so you got 11 points if it's PPR scoring. Just give it time. He's going to have you can throw on Tennessee because you don't run very much on him. So AJ Brown is primed for a great game against Tennessee. Packers coming up Jair Alexander can be beat. As much as I love him as a player, he gets a little overconfident sometimes. And AJ Brown is a bully at wide receiver. So I think you'll be fine over the next couple weeks. Oop, not that one. Sorry. Came up on me really quick. All right. Jelly of the month. love the handle. Lost since I played Kadarius Toney over Palmer. Yeah, I think a lot of us did. And a lot of us probably dropped Palmer because Mike Williams came back healthy and Keenan Allen came back healthy. Obviously, we saw Mike Williams leave the game re-injuring that ankle, tamped it up, tried to come back in. That's the thing with high ankle sprains. You just never know. Once it's aggravated, it's hard to kind of keep that pace. But how high do you rank Josh Palmer rest of the season? We know he had 2 touchdowns yesterday. I think with just Keenan Allen, Palmer is fine. I think you can pretty much slot him in as a top 30 option, maybe even top 20 option, just because of how much the Chargers run the football. If Keenan and Mike Williams are both playing, Palmer is nothing more than a boom bust wide receiver 3 flex play, in my opinion. Austin, you have anything different?
Yeah, I would say if Mike Williams is out, I would pretty confidently put Josh Palmer as a top 20 receiver rest of season. I think I agree with you. Outside of with both of them in the lineup still, he's boom bust, but I would keep him stashed. Like Keenan Allen dealing with a hamstring issue. Hamstring issues tend to re-aggravate themselves. Mike Williams,
also a 30-year-old wide receiver too. So
yeah, so I think he is a bench stash. I would be trying to drop other people if you're needing to make room on your bench, but yeah, I like Josh Palmer.
And I would still hang on to Toney. Not gonna lie, the dude just has too much talent. We'll figure out the hamstring at some point. If he ends up missing more games, then yeah, you can probably drop him. And of course, the moment you drop him, he's going to come back and play and ball out because that's just Kadarius Toney in a nutshell. And yes, Elixirs, I do believe Garrett Wilson was averaging more points with Flacco. I understand the head coach wanting to stick with his number one, quarterback. At a certain point, though, you got to let it go. He had the lowest completion percentage last year at 55.6 among qualified starters. Guess what Zach Wilson has this year? The lowest completion percentage amongst qualifying starting quarterbacks at 55.6. So there's that. Yeah. All right. And then the last one here, Myers and Hollywood Brown killing me. Toney over Burks for the bench. No, I would hang on to Treylon Burks. 1,000% hang on to Treylon Burks.
Yeah.
All on board with Treylon Burks. All right. So before we get into a shot of espresso, we get to pay some bills. As you can see below me, Club Fantasy's Monday Hangxiety is presented by Manscaped. It's the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the ultimate men's hygiene bundle, the Performance Package, which, thankfully to Manscaped, they gifted myself, Ryan, and Joe as part of this whole campaign. And I got to tell you, absolutely fantastic. The presentation alone is great, but what it includes, it's the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer. You get the Crop Preserver groin deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner. Just fantastic. Because let's be honest, if you're not going to take care of yourself, somebody needs to take care of them for you. The Performance Boxer Briefs, which I can say are absolutely fantastic because as somebody who's had thunder thighs their entire life, the anti-chafing material, A1, baby. And the travel bag to hold all of your goodies. And it is a very nice and elegant travel bag. So join over 5 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer just for you. Use promo code CLUBFANTASY at manscaped.com at checkout. You will save 20% off your order and you will get free shipping. So once again, go to manscaped.com, enter in the code CLUBFANTASY and get 20% off as early as right now. So if you still want to watch the show, that's great. But if not, head over to Manscaped and get yourself some Christmas presents or for somebody else. It's fantastic. All right, cool. Let's go to a shot of espresso. Quality performance that gets the juices flowing. Austin, this was your big preseason call. I had to put it in the show sheet. And I said, all right, buddy, this is all yours. I'm not going to hog this one. Tell us why you're excited now about Najee Harris, buddy.
Well, excited is a strong word. We're like, mildly optimistic of oh, hey, I wasn't completely off with my predictions for Najee Harris' success. No, it was incredible to see Najee Harris finally show the fantasy player he can be, to finally get in the end zone. There are still some things about this game for him that I'm like a little bit like, okay, I hope that sticks around. We'll see what happens. But 20 carries, 20 touches, I believe, 90 yards for 2 touchdowns. Um, those 2 touchdowns really help your day. I think they do inflate his performance a little bit, but still a little bit of positive regression. This offense hasn't been scoring a whole lot at all this season. The thing that was really optimistic was to see 4 catches on 6 targets. That's kind of what I thought was going to be his thing this year, was continuing to be used in the pass game. Like, he was top 3 in receptions and targets last season. It just hasn't been that way. I did see on Twitter at WyattB_FF made the point, like, is Najee just now starting to recover from his Liz Frank? Because he's started to look better over the past couple of weeks. I am a little bit curious about that myself, if he's still been kind of nursing it back. I pulled up some PFF stats, and he was averaging just he's been averaging 0.8 yards before contact this season, which is awful. But in the past couple of weeks, it's gone up to about 1.5 yards before contact. So a little bit on the offensive line, a little bit more burst from him. But I'm not necessarily holding my breath on Najee Harris at this point. You're still probably starting him, but I want to see this continue for another week before I'm like, yes, this is what I was hoping for.
Yeah, with Najee, if you're still trotting him out, I'm hoping that you're in playoff contention in spite of him.
Yes.
Because you likely took him in the first round, and things really probably have not gone your way because Najee's had a god-awful season this year. But yeah, I'll stick with the running backs here because, I mean, Jamal Williams, another, multi-touchdown game. He had 3 yesterday. He's become the Mike Tolbert, if you want to date yourself a little bit. Sorry, I'm old. The absolute vulture there in Detroit. He scored 12 touchdowns in 10 games. 12 touchdowns. Like, this feels like, we're all going to be hyping him up going into next year. Touchdown regression. It's probably going to happen. It is what it is. But Jamal Williams has been an absolute stud this year. And I was telling people at the beginning of the year to not get too excited because, hey, I'm Team Swift. And you know what? I'm starting to come out on Team Swift here because they're just not letting DeAndre Swift touch the football. This is Jamal Williams' backfield, and we're all just spectators at this point because go Jamal Williams. The Hard Knocks bump is real with this one, let me tell you. And again, Austin, sticking with running backs.
Yeah.
A lot of good running back performances this week.
Yeah. And I think the next one for me is Tony Pollard. It's good to see him continuing to get run, even though Ezekiel Elliott has been back. I've tended to be on the train of like Ezekiel Elliott serves a really important role for the Cowboys because he is a sick pass blocker. Like, you've seen him take on like 2 defenders at a time.
And he's been like that ever since he came into the league.
Yeah. And so I understand why Dallas needs him in their offense, but it has just become so evident this year that it needs to be more of a slight favor towards Tony Pollard, where Pollard is getting the 60% and Elliott's getting the 40%. And I think we're finally starting to see that. He had 21 touches, 189 total yards between rushing and receiving, and 2 touchdowns. He looks so much better than Ezekiel Elliott. He's got so much more burst, and I'm hoping that we see this continue going forward. So if you can acquire Tony Pollard now, it's probably too late, but I think you should go after him because down the stretch he could be a fantasy winner.
1000%. I mean, Ryan and I like to talk about it all the time. The change of pace back is more efficient, typically because the starting running back is the one that's handling all the heavy blows and wearing down the defense. It's kind of getting to a point where Pollard doesn't even need Zeke to do that because he himself is wearing down the defense because of how electric he is. It's good to see him getting more involved in the passing game because for the last year plus, that's what everybody's been talking about. Oh, hey, we're going to get Tony Pollard more involved as a receiver in this offense and running out of the slot, blah, blah, blah. Well, they've kind of had to because they haven't had a reliable number 2 wide receiver or even a reliable number 3 wide receiver at this point. Like, Noah Brown had a couple really good games in the beginning part of the season with Cooper Rush, but CeeDee Lamb right now is hogging all of the targets at wide receiver. And there's a lot of talk that OBJ is being recruited to Dallas. And, you're seeing all the tweets from like Dexter Lawrence and Micah Parsons and so on and so forth. But, what OBJ you get obviously is still to be determined, but I don't think anything is going to take away from disrupting this offense because right now it runs through CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard, and they're getting the job done. So kudos to there. I'm going to shift over to the wide receiver position because Devontae Adams just told me to fuck off when I said that Patrick Surtain was going to hold him to a below top 30 performance at wide receiver. What made it even more embarrassing was the overtime touchdown. Adams just absolutely shook Patrick Surtain out of his goddamn shoes, turned him all around, and was absolutely wide open. I mean, just on the first quarter alone, Adams was 5 for 94 in a touchdown. Like, what? Granted, didn't really have much after that, but then, of course, had the dagger in overtime. Ended with 13 targets, 7 receptions, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns. If there's one good thing that has come out of Las Vegas this year, it's been Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs. So, kudos to Adams. I love getting proved wrong. It's fun, right? This is why we do this, to sound like dumbasses. And before you hit on the next guy, because I know we've talked about him a little bit earlier, I do want to give 2 quick shout outs. One, Cordero Patterson, my co-host with no pun intended, Joe Zolo, has been beating this drum for years now. He claims that Cordero Patterson is the greatest kick returner of all time. I've held steadfast in my love for Devin Hester, not just because of his performance in the NFL, but because he's a former Miami Hurricane, and I am a diehard Miami Hurricanes fan. And as much as I do believe that Devin Hester is the best all-around kick returner, especially when you include punt returns, you cannot dispute Cordero Patterson as the number 1 kickoff return man in NFL history. He set the record yesterday with his 9th return for a touchdown. And really, now he's doing it as a runner, but he's always done it as a kick returner. So the hats off to you, Patterson, and I hope to one day see you with that gold jacket because you absolutely deserve it. And lastly, I'll give a shout out to the kickers, as I mentioned before, Bill Maher with the Cowboys, Tyler Bass with Buffalo, 4 field goals, 4 PATs for Maher, 50, 60, which actually he kicked that 60 twice, 53 and 27 for Maher, 6 field goals for Bass, 42, 36, 56, 49, 28, and 39, including 1 PAT. Kickers had themselves a banner day, and I'm giving them a shout out simply because Ryan's not here. So I have to make him feel like his presence is here because he likes to rub it in that kickers are still people too. And, at least today they proved him right on that front. So I'll let you hit on your last point, Austin, before we get into morning mimosas.
Yeah, last point is just a shout out at tight end. I mean, we could shout him out every week, but Travis Kelce just continuing to put his stamp the fact that he is the number 1 tight end in the NFL and in fantasy football. I know starting off in the preseason, and it'll happen again next year. There's always a lot of debates. Is it Travis Kelce or somebody else? It's Travis Kelce. He's the number 1. I know Mark Andrews has been injured, but it's still going to be Travis Kelce. I don't care. Full health. I would take Travis Kelce over any other tight end any day of the week until he retires.
I believe he's averaging roughly 8 fantasy points more per game than Mark Andrews at tight end too.
Which is also why I think you should get rid of the tight end position in general and turn it into a receiver flex, because you can still use Travis Kelce and he's like a top 10 receiver. So, let's just stop messing around with Cole Kmet.
Among flex players right now, the wide receiver, running back, tight end, he is number 4 overall, I believe, in points per game. Yeah. He's and this is something that Ryan and I talked about in the offseason, and definitely, we got some pushback from people, and that's fine. I get it if you're trying to get out ahead on the the age cliff, so to speak, but with no wide receivers, Travis Kelce is their fucking offense. He is the Chiefs' offense. He has a rapport with Patrick Mahomes that really just, it's unrivaled right now in the NFL. It truly is. And Jay, you're 1,000% correct. Kelce is in a tier by himself. It's unreal what he's doing right now in Kansas City. All right, one real quick question from Elixirs. This is standard scoring now. Rondell Moore and CMC, or Garoppolo and Connor, who's getting more points combined?
In standard, I'm probably going Rondell Moore, CMC.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Like I said, we've been banging this drum. It's a great matchup for Moore. Of course, we don't know which Colt McCoy is showing up, but anytime you have CMC, I'm going to take him even in standard over any running back. I really don't care. Except maybe
San Francisco might run the ball 30 times, and then that takes Garoppolo out.
Correct, yeah. And I will say the one caveat here is this game is in Mexico City. This is very high elevation. So I am a little curious to see how that may possibly affect not just the San Francisco running game, but also the Arizona running game, because, running that much in high altitude for some of these guys to handle that type of workload, it gets excessive, especially on your breathing, as somebody that's lived in Las Vegas at high altitude. So just throwing that out there. All right. Morning mimosas, the early morning tingling feeling that something's on the horizon and expecting more within a week or two. Austin, give us your first guy.
My first guy, and I just can't stop. It's Aaron Rodgers. And I feel sheepish even going there. But here's the thing. Over the past 2 weeks, he started to come back, and we've seen more traditional Aaron Rodgers for fantasy purposes. He's gotten at least 19 points in both of his past 2 matchups, and his schedule down the stretch looks pretty nice. Apart from playing the Philadelphia Eagles next week, I don't want to start him then. But down the stretch, he then has the Chicago Bears, the Rams, Miami Dolphins, the Vikings, and the Detroit Lions. We'll just throw that last performance against the Lions away, but down the stretch, he has a lot of easier matchups, and I think we can upgrade him down the stretch. He's also currently quarterback 16, so he's still outside of starting territory, but knowing Aaron Rodgers, he can trend back towards being a starter the rest of season, and so I could see him being a low-end quarterback in one quarterback leagues. So I'm keeping an eye on him, keeping him on my bench for now. He's not droppable to me, but Aaron Rodgers, he's never finished outside of the top 10. And if he's going to make it inside the top 10 this year, he's going to have to make a charge the rest of the season.
The plus side for Rodgers has been the maturation of rookie Christian Watson. If he keeps finding ways to get him the ball in the end zone, that's obviously going to raise and enhance Rodgers' fantasy stock. So before I get into mine, I want to throw out a couple breaking news tweets that I've seen come through. Kyle Pitts is believed to have suffered an MCL sprain based on initial tests. There's going to be an MRI later today to confirm the diagnosis. An MCL sprain could potentially land him out for a couple weeks at minimum. Another pleasant surprise, the Lions are officially designating rookie wide receiver Jameson Williams to return from the PUP list. He will practice today. They did also just get back DJ Chark for this past game. So you're going to have a couple burners now on the outside with Amon St. Brown to eat in the middle of that field. So that should be a huge boom for the Lions offense. And also DeAndre Hopkins has been battling a hamstring issue all week. Looks to be good to go tonight versus the 49ers. So there's that. All right. My first pick here, Samaje Perine. As I mentioned earlier, 3 receiving touchdowns on Sunday. Joe Mixon missed the game with a concussion. Perine's not going to be an efficient runner. But guess what? Oh, there's Joe Mixon. And Perine's a bigger back. So as long as this offense can keep churning the way that it's churning without Jamar Chase, Perine's going to see some volume in the receiving game as well. So that's going to be a guy that you should be rushing to get on your waiver wire just in case Mixon misses this game. Don't look at it as a burned waiver claim because, blah, 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 this and that. He's a backup running back. So he's in that same tier as guys like Alexander Madison. Hell, at this point, I feel like you can put DeAndre Swift in that category as guys that, if the starter goes down, the backup gets elevated. It's due for a big work. Yeah, how the mighty have fallen, let me tell you. But next week, since he plays Tennessee, it's not a great matchup in terms of running the football. Tennessee is very good at stopping the run. But again, Perine offers a lot as a receiving back, and Joe Burrow has not been hesitant to throw to running backs. Who's your next pick, Austin?
It's Treylon Burks, 7 catches for 111 yards. I mean, he's really started to get rolling in this offense after coming off of injury, and honestly, the Titans pass game just looked better on Thursday night with him in the offense. So I'm feeling more optimistic about this Titans pass offense moving forward. And I think Treylon Burks, if he's available in your league, he's a must add.
1,000%. Love me some Treylon Burks. And the one thing I loved was the route tree. They kept it pretty simple for him. Did a lot of the same stuff that he ran in Arkansas, a lot of the crossers, within 5-10 yards of the line of scrimmage, and a lot of go routes because he can use his big frame and his speed to get by the defense.
Which is the AJ Brown role in that offense.
1,000%. And that's why everybody was so excited for what Treylon Burks could do. I'm going to give a quick shout out. We mentioned Josh Palmer a little bit earlier in the show. 2 touchdowns Sunday night. Obviously, with Mike Williams out, there's a chance that this role keeps going for him because we know Justin Herbert's going to throw the football. But I want to give a shout out to Cam Akers. We've buried this guy. And you know what? He cleared 30 yards. Holy fucking shit. Holy fucking shit. 61 yards again, ties the season high for him. His 14 carries paced the team. I know a lot of us got kind of excited, Kyron Williams coming back. And Williams did look good on the touches that he had. But, 7 carries for Kyron Williams, 14 for Cam Akers. There's absolutely zero PPR value for Cam Akers. He has not seen a target, I don't believe, since like week 3, in all honesty. But if they're going to keep feeding him the football, and as I talked about earlier in the show, what reason is there for the Rams to keep trotting out Matthew Stafford if he's now suffered a concussion in back-to-back games? This season is absolutely lost for them. What this team needs to do is keep trotting out Cam Akers to boost his trade value in the offseason and get some sort of value for him and just move on. It's what you as the team want. It's what him as the player want. Just be done with it. And you know what? His rest of season schedule over the next 4 weeks, I would say, not too bad. KC, Seattle, Las Vegas, Green Bay, outside of the Packers, all of those teams are top 10 in yielding fantasy points to running backs. There's a lot of opportunity here if the Rams can figure out how to run the football. Plain and simple. Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah. My last one is going to be Darius Slayton. I was thinking this way even before we heard the Wan'Dale Robinson news, particularly with Wan'Dale Robinson out for the season. Slayton has been wide receiver 20 over the past 5 weeks. That's since week 7, and that's including the fact that they had a bye week. In that time, he's had over a 20% target share in those games, and he's only 21.5% rostered on ESPN. I know we seem to forget that Slayton was good at one point. Like, he's had a lot of injury struggle over the past 2 years. And at this point, there's not many other receivers to throw to in that Giants offense. So fire up Darius Slayton.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Golladay is just collecting paychecks at this point. You've got Darius Slayton. You just lost Wan'Dale Robinson. So your next man up is Richie James, which I'm sure his name will come up a little bit later. All right, cream or sugar. This is the buy low, sell high section. Obviously, the cream, that's what rises to the top. Sugar floats to the bottom. So, Austin, you've got actually a few more names than me here. So I'm going to let you start. Read off a couple guys that you're looking to buy low on here.
Yeah, my first one is going to be David Montgomery. I love David Montgomery and have loved him for a long time. I was him top 12 for the season. And here's the thing. He's got some really good matchups down the stretch. Chicago's offense, they're going up against a lot of bottom tier run defenses over the next several weeks. Khalil Herbert, he's out for at least 2 more weeks. We don't know when he's going to be coming back after that. So this backfield is David Montgomery's. And he had more receiving yards than Cole Kmet on Sunday. So if you like Cole Kmet, you should like David Montgomery.
Ryan has the Grinch grin on his face.
I saw that and I was like, it's just too easy. It's too easy to weave into the narrative.
Soft toss. Let's go.
Yeah. But no, and we've seen David Montgomery pick up steam down the stretch. He's on a contract year, and so he's got something to prove with 5 games left to try and get a good contract with some team that needs a running back, maybe the Falcons. Who knows? So I think he's a good person to target right now. My other one is Jonathan Taylor. I think there's still a window to buy Jonathan Taylor because we didn't quite see the full ceiling performance that we expect from Jonathan Taylor. But I think one thing we didn't talk about when discussing the Phillies-Colts game earlier is that on the opening drive, the Colts looked really good, particularly on the run. And I think some of that's just like planning an opening script is a lot easier than adjusting down the stretch as the defense has figured out what you're doing. But the Colts came out and they were running the ball well. I think while Jeff Saturday is, in my opinion, not qualified to be a head coach, he is helping that offensive line, and that helped them be able to run the ball effectively on the opening game script. And so I'm hoping that trend continues and this rush game opens up down the stretch.
Yeah, that was one thing that Ryan and I and Joe even we touched on with the Colts bringing in Saturday. Being an offensive lineman, what do? They pave the way for the running back, and that's going to be his philosophy. This is a team that has a good defense, and they're going to run the football. They ran it right down the Raiders' throat, and they came out of the gate running down Philly's throat. The difference is Philly adjusted with their new toys at defensive tackle and Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. The Colts still have a ways to go. I mean, they have a first-time play caller in Parks Frazier or whatever his name is. I'm probably saying that incorrectly, but and a first-time coach in the NFL in Jeff Saturday. So there's still a lot to figure out, obviously, but it's still Jonathan Taylor, and if you can get him low, get him low. For the sugar, right now, I'm selling what I can for Lamar Jackson. Right now, he is being inflated by weeks 1 through 3 when he totaled 12 touchdowns, 11 of them passing. Since week 4, and that includes the Ravens bye week, he has totaled 7 touchdowns. 7. 6 passing, 1 rushing. He has a decent schedule to close out the year, but we're seeing a guy that has to carry this offense, and it's just starting to wear down. Like, he's doing just enough to keep the Ravens in the game. The defense the pass rush is starting to get going. They're getting some pieces back in Bowser and Ajabo, their rookie second-round pick. But this was the same thing we saw last year. He had to do too much, ended up getting hurt. So this year, I think he's doing just enough to keep the offense going and let the defense carrying him. And then as the team gets going down the stretch, he has to start picking things up. He has the energy to do it. And that's where I think that right now you're hanging on to Lamar Jackson simply for the name value and what he did off the first 3 weeks of the season. So if you can sell him for, I don't know, Dak Prescott, who's totaled 8 touchdowns in his last 3 games, I think I would do that. Not going to lie. I think I would do that.
Yeah. My only concern there is you're selling him off the name value. If somebody starts looking at his game log, then it might diminish his trade value. But
how many people in your home leagues aren't looking at game by game? All they're looking at is QB8 or whatever his QB ranking is right now.
That's fair.
That's what they look at, right? And I'll pull up this question from Jay because I think it's pretty valid here. Who would you rather have rest of the season, Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields? And to me, this is overwhelmingly Justin Fields, pending the left shoulder injury. If it's not too serious, obviously, if it is serious, you're going to pivot towards Jackson. But this is Justin Fields for me, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I think it's Justin Fields. The caveat I will have is if defenses start to adjust and have a spy on him, then I start to worry because his value is his legs right now. Like Lamar Jackson,
he's not throwing the football.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, he has poor receivers.
He at least has Mark
Andrews. He can get it out with his arm. So that's my only concern. But yeah, Justin Fields.
I mentioned this on Wednesday, or I believe it was Saturday on Starts a Different Day. Right now, there's only 3 quarterbacks that I would start over Justin Fields. It's Patrick Mahomes, it's Josh Allen, and it's Jalen Hurts. Yeah. And right now, I'm very tempted to put Fields over Josh Allen the way that Josh Allen's been playing. The upside to the game against Cleveland is poor performance, only 197 yards and a touchdown. No interceptions, because that's what he's been throwing a lot of over the past few weeks.
Yep.
So now, hopefully, he's got those kinks worked out, and we can get back to the Josh Allen that was running through the NFL in the beginning of the season. And a close 4 is Joe Burrow. Even without Jamar Chase, he's doing it. 355, 4 touchdowns this past week. Obviously, he doesn't have the same value with his legs that some of these other guys have. But if you're throwing the football that much and you're throwing that many touchdowns, it can negate what a guy like a Lamar Jackson or a Justin Fields or even a Jalen Hurts can do with their legs. Hurts hasn't been running as much. He did this past week, 80 yards and a touchdown. He knew he had to get the job done on his legs. And that, I think, is the difference with Hurts than it is with Fields. Fields is running out of necessity because he has no weapons to throw to.
Yes.
Jalen Hurts has plenty of weapons. He's choosing not to run because he has the weapons that can get it done. But when he needs to run, he will run. And that's what we saw yesterday. So go your last buy low here before I pull up this question from Raheem.
Yeah, it's actually a sell high, and it's on Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, hasn't started all 16 games in the season since 2019. He's the past 3 years, he's gone 16 games, 12 and 14. So he's shown that he has a hard time making it through a full season. Also, I hate it, but Deshaun Watson is coming back, and this team is going to start relying on the pass more. And Chubb doesn't catch passes. He has 16 catches on the season. That's averaging less than 2 catches a game. So I would try and sell high and see what else you can get out there at running back.
I debated putting Chubb on that list, obviously for very different reasons, mostly just because the schedule is a little bit more difficult. But, you know, the way that they're not using Kareem Hunt, they're just going to keep relying on Chubb. I don't buy the narrative that, you know, with Watson coming back, they're just going to throw more. That's not their offense. I'm sorry. Kevin Stefanski refuses to throw the football. He had to yesterday, and Brissett had a career day, 324, 3 touchdowns. Great, awesome, cool. We know Deshaun Watson can sling it, but again, all Deshaun Watson does is open up the run game for Nick Chubb because of how athletic Deshaun Watson is. But you have a guy that hasn't played in almost 2 years. Why are you going to throw him out there to throw the football 35, 40 plus times? Like, I just don't see it happening because his arm's going to fall off. So, you know, I again, don't hate selling Chubb simply because of the schedule and how inconsistent that offense is. I do disagree, though, with your reasoning, Austin. Just throwing that out there. So, all right, we'll pull up this question before we pay some bills again. Raheem, do I play Hopkins tonight? Who's hurt? As we mentioned earlier in the show, he's reported to be good to go. Or Brandon Ayuk. I'm sorry. For me, you're not sitting DeAndre Hopkins. I do love me some Brandon Ayuk. Don't get me wrong. You're not sitting DeAndre Hopkins.
Austin. Oh, see, I would sit DeAndre Hopkins and go with Brandon Ayuk just because I feel like he's become the clear number one receiver in this offense. And to me, like the point that you were making earlier about the 49ers defense is they give up points to the slot. They don't give points up to the outside. And I think I worry about Hopkins getting a lot of coverage tonight and having a hard time getting open. And Colt McCoy's not going to try and squeeze it in there, I don't think.
Well, he had 14 targets last week with Colt McCoy. Just throwing that out there. I think here's the thing. Ayuk is going to be productive, but he's going to do it on half the targets that DeAndre Hopkins is going to see.
Yeah. I'm also expecting the Cardinals to score like 13 to 17 points, so I don't feel super optimistic about their
Hopkins
chances
gets
tonight.
10 catches, 89 yards, 18.9 points. I'll take it.
Brandon Ayuk gets, 7 catches for 60 yards.
4 for 70 and a touchdown, right? There's your 19 points.
I mean, yeah, it is kind of a toss-up, so you go either way.
Yeah, like I said, if you're really that worried, Raheem, about the Hopkins and potentially re-injuring the hamstring, Ayuk is a fine pivot. Me personally, if I have DeAndre Hopkins, I'm playing him. Absolutely zero question. All right, last read, and we're going to get into the grand finale. As you can see on this screen, Club Fantasy's Monday Hangxiety is presented by Manscaped. If you go to manscaped.com, use the promo code CLUBFANTASY, you can save 20% off of your entire purchase and get free shipping. Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They recently launched the ultimate men's hygiene bundle, the Performance Package. Comes with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is absolutely fantastic. And the one thing that I love about it, 2 things actually. One, the blades are waterproof. So easy to clean. Absolutely fantastic. Love it. But it also has an LED light because let's face it, sometimes when you're down there, things can get a little cavernous. That light helps you see, and it is absolutely fantastic. Helps reduce nicks, reduces the risk of ingrown hairs and grooming accidents. It's an absolutely fantastic tool. I love it. Highly recommend. Also comes with the Weed Whacker ears and nose hair trimmer. And for all of you that happen to be middle-aged like myself, where hair starts getting a little darker and, grows in unwanted places, the ear and nose hair trimmer, it saves so much time. And I promise you, your partners will appreciate you for it. It also comes with the Crop Preserver Groin Deodorant, Crop Reviver Toner, the Performance Boxer Briefs, and a travel bag to hold all of your goodies. So join over 5 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer from Club Fantasy. Go to manscaped.com, use the promo code Club Fantasy, save 20%, and get free shipping with your entire purchase. Manscaped.com. Do it after the show, or do it right now because we're closing up anyway. So here you go. All right. The segment from which this whole show came from. Chill the fuck out. Austin, I brought this guy up. I'm going to tell us why I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, it's Cam Akers. He had 71 yards or 61 yards, but 0 pass game upside. He only outscored Kyron Williams by 0.7 points because at least Kyron Williams had a catch. I don't want to part of any LA Rams offensive player at this point for fantasy purposes. There's not a single player that I feel confident starting. Maybe Tyler Higbee if I'm desperate at tight end, but I'm probably just streaming tight ends at that point and not relying on Higbee. And so I'm saying Cam Akers, it ain't it. It's just he might pop off a little bit down the stretch to try and boost his trade prospects, but I'm not buying in with Akers.
Well, I'm gonna just remind everybody. Yes, we know Saquon Barkley struggled this past week. I think he only had 5.5 fantasy points. Chill the fuck out. Like, seriously, calm down. Sometimes great players have bad games. It is what it is. Yes, I know schedule. They've got 4 straight division games coming up, 2 against Philly, 1 each against Dallas and Washington. Saquon destroys Philly. So I don't really care how great that the run defense may now possibly be with Joseph and Sue in tow. But, losing Wan'Dale Robinson, relying on Slayton and Richie James, Saquon is still this entire offense. He's going to break the big plays. It's what he does. So just calm down. And I'm going to throw an honorable mention in here. Dameon Pierce. Yes, we know the Texans are bad. 10 rushes, 8 yards. Absolutely not great. Washington has a stout defensive line. They're finally starting to get things together. This is why they've won 5 of their last 6 games. It is because the defense is playing up to their standards. Don't worry about Pierce. Don't worry about Barkley. This is precisely why I only scored like 90-something points in one of my leagues, because I have Barkley and Pierce, and that sucked. But hey, you know what? Shit happens. It's fantasy. You live to play the next week. Austin, round us out before we get into the deep waivers.
Yeah, I've got 2 quick ones. Isaiah Pacheco. Look, he led Kansas City in carries. He hit 100 yards. That's great. The problem is he also does not offer pass game upside, and Travis Kelce is the primary red zone target. Pacheco he needs to get 15 to 20 yard touchdowns if he's going to get in the end zone, because once you get to the 5-yard line, they're going to do some gimmick play, or they're going to target Travis Kelce, or maybe both. Sometimes the gimmicks go to Kelce. So I don't really buy in on Pacheco. I think he's a good stash, but that's about it. Also, I just think there's maybe no Kansas City running back to target, and maybe we just need to get off that narrative. And
they're at best an injury or bye-week fill-in. Granted, yes. I agree they deserve to be rostered because every starting running back should be, but you're definitely not trotting them out in your starting lineups with confidence.
Yeah, like week 14 when there's 6 teams on bye, maybe then. Last one for me, Christian Watson. 5 touchdowns on 6 catches is not sustainable, and I think that's going to come crashing down, and he's going to be 2020 Chase Claypool.
Ooh, saucy. But hey, you know what? If Aaron Rodgers is going to finally finish as a QB10,
I know.
You're going to be wrong.
Hey, to be fair, though, Alan Lazard dropped some key passes in that game. So I think there's also some circumstantial stuff happening there. There are other receivers.
Fair enough. I disagree on Watson. I think he's going to be definitely has the potential for league winning upside. So, all right.
I just want his targets to go up.
Oh, 1,000%.
That's all.
Joel, our resident Packers fan. Sorry, buddy. But hey, Since you're logging off, go to manscaped.com and use the promo code Club Fantasy for 20% off, buddy. There you go. Shameless plug. All right. Ryan was kind enough, since he's not here, to fill in his deep waivers, and I had to give him a lot of shit because he plugged in Wan'Dale Robinson as his number 2 guy, who happened to be 11% rostered. This, of course, was right before the news came out that Robinson tore his ACL and was done for the season. So in typical Ryan fashion, Richie James. Again, I don't know. I guess, maybe, sure. Yeah, look, he's going to be probably the 3rd target in this offense now behind Barkley and Slayton. There's still going to be some value there. Daniel Jones threw for over 300 yards for the first time this year. Shows that maybe he can actually do that. I don't know very consistently because, they lost still. But, hey, like I said, 4 division games upcoming for the Giants. A lot to work out and figure out for that team. Samaje Perine, 4% rostered. Look, as I mentioned earlier, Joe Mixon left the game with a concussion. You do not know if he's going to miss a game or not. We probably won't know until closer to the end of the week. So Perine becomes a must-add at this point. Nico Collins, 11% rostered. Another decent game this week. If I'm not mistaken, Austin, correct me if I'm wrong on those stats. I don't know what Nico did specifically, but Brandon Cooks is struggling right now. And 2 weeks ago, week 10, Collins out-targeted Cooks. And if I'm not mistaken, Collins out-targeted him again against Washington. Yes? No? Do we have those?
Look away from letting you know.
Okay.
Here we go. All right. Targets. Brandon Cooks had 6 targets. Nico Collins, 7 targets. So yes, out-targeted. Had 2 more receptions than Brandon Cooks. Only thing is Brandon Cooks has had way more yards per catch.
Which is understandable. He's faster.
Yeah.
That is what it is. So
yes, being out-targeted.
But Nico is becoming a reliable target for one Davis Mills. Again, wide receiver 3 flex upside in this offense that is really struggling. But hey, they're always going to be losing. They're always going to be throwing. I think Nico's worth an ad. Obviously, with DeAndre Carter, 7% rostered currently. A lot of that is value or is tied to how much time Mike Williams misses after re-injuring the ankle. If he's not playing, Carter's going to take a step back. They'll probably shift Keenan Allen more to the outside alongside Josh Palmer, putting Carter in the slot. Had another decent game Sunday night. And going back to the Kansas City backfield, Ryan's cheating a little bit because Jerick McKinnon is 26% rostered. But out of all of the Kansas City running backs, right now the only one catching passes is McKinnon, and we know how much more valuable targets are than carries. So there's that. And guys that we can officially drop, RIP Russell Wilson, because my God, he's done writing. I'm putting it that way. He's done.
There was a moment after the bye week where I was like, okay, he threw for 300 yards. We can work with that. And then it's just continuing to be mid.
This offense has struggled once again to score 17 points.
Yeah.
I will say kudos to Nathaniel Hackett for being smart enough and putting his ego aside to just give up play calling and see what happens with a change there. I think right now the fault is in Wilson and the offensive scheme itself, because it's just not working. They need to go back to the drawing board and figure some shit out, because there's some talent on this offense.
They need to play the Russell Wilson offense from Seattle.
Do that. Shit, anything can work outside of what is working. I'll bring it up, Matthew Stafford. We've said this for weeks now. He's just not startable in fantasy. Still 47.1% rostered on ESPN leagues. And now he's had concussions in back-to-back weeks. I would not be shocked at all if McVay shuts him down. Nyheim Hines, if you're still holding out hope that he's going to be anything in Buffalo, give it up, because he's nothing more than a kick returner at this point. James Cook is handling all, if not most, of the passing game work, with Singletary handling the rushing upside. Hines is a return guy, and for me, that's really about it, and that shows no value in fantasy. I know some of us are hanging on to Chase Claypool because, hey, Justin Fields needs a weapon. Not it.
Hasn't scored 5 points since being in Chicago.
Yep, not it. And 64.2% rostered in ESPN leagues. Let it go. Just let it go. It's like trying to hold on to Breece Hall because he's on IR. Like, it's Breece Hall. Just let it go. It's okay. Let it go. And lastly, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Look, I know everybody wants a piece of the Patrick Mahomes offense, We got excited about Kadarius Toney, then the hamstring happens, yada, 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 etc. MVS is a wind sprinter, dude. You don't get fantasy points for running 40 times. I'm sorry. It's just not it. Just give it up. 53.8% rostered. Let it go. All right. That concludes that Monday night preview. Austin, you have any thoughts on 49ers at Arizona? And by at Arizona, I mean at what is it? Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. I think that's how you pronounce the stadium.
I did not look up the stadium name, so I cannot speak to that. But my prediction originally was going to be 49ers winning 23-17. Now I'm going to change that to winning 23-13. I think the Cardinals do not cover the spread with Colt McCoy at quarterback.
I'll take it. Austin, thank you so much for filling in for Ryan this week. Always fun to chat football and hang out on a Monday morning and recap all the fun games. For everybody that's tuned in, we appreciate it. Feel free to hit that like, subscribe underneath. We currently sit at 481 subscribers on YouTube. When we hit 500, I'm giving away some goodies. And by goodies, I mean you get to choose what you win. You have your choice of a signed Mark Andrews mini helmet, a signed Nick Chubb Browns jersey, or a signed Stephon Diggs Bills jersey. So if your profile on YouTube is not public, feel free to shoot myself or Austin or Ryan or Joe or whomever. Shoot us a DM on Instagram or Twitter. As again, you can follow Club Fantasy on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Club Fantasy FFL. Just show us a screenshot of you subscribing. We'll make sure that your name is added if it doesn't pop up because it's private. Feel free to check out the website. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com. We drop articles all week. Ryan will have all of his columns up, the DFS matchup report, as well as the pick 'em up column. And I believe he will also have his stream of the week, which will drop. I think he'll probably have it Wednesday this week because we do have 3 Thursday games. Thanksgiving week is typically a bye week for everybody here at Club Fantasy. It's one of my favorite holidays, so I tend to run this business that way. But we do have our Monday show. We'll have the Saturday start sit show. No pun intended on Wednesday night. There won't be an IDP show Thursday night, and there will not be a sneaky flex on Thursday night as well. But we wanted to kind of bookend the week to try to help in any way that we possibly can. But as always, the DMs are open at Club Fantasy FFL, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow me at the one Hudsonian. That's the number 1 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can follow Austin at Austin_FFL. You can follow Ryan Weiss at the Fantasy5. That's 5 spelled out. You can also follow Joe Zolo. That's at Joe_Zolo, excuse me. All the socials. So with that, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Enjoy Thanksgiving week. Spend time with your family. We'll see you guys on Saturday.